All right, 7.1 Learning C, the Cold War gets hot. This is a supplementary that is going to give you hopefully some good groundwork for your next activity. So you can just sort of sit back and listen and push pause and replay when you need. So whenever we talk about Korea, you got to sort of know the history of it. First off, Japan has controlled it since 1910 and controlled it all the way until it lost the World War II in 1945. At the end of World War II, Soviet Union invaded Manchuria, just north of China, and occupied the northern half of Korea. This made it communist. The southern half was occupied by the United States, and a non-communist democracy was established. During the Chinese Civil War between 1945 and 49, North Korea helped the Chinese communists win that war. They saw the value of having a communist ally north of them. Right before North Korea invaded Korea, which is in June of 1950, the USSR informed them that they would not help them in the invasion. They decided they didn't want to risk it. They didn't want a World War III starting. Now, the United States didn't know that, so all the time, the rest of the war, the big question is the United States going to actually have to fight the Soviet Union as well? The American characters are General Douglas MacArthur, the guy who won't go away. He is involved in the Bonus March in 1932, the Philippines in World War II, the Pacific Theater in World War II, and now he is also, he's a leading figure in the occupation of Japan after World War II, and now he's going to be the lead commander for the UN forces in the Korean War. President Harry Truman is the president during this as well. Kim Il-sung is the communist leader of North Korea. Syngman Rhee is the first president of South Korea, and Mao Zedong is the new leader of China, who's been in power less than 6 or 7 months. Here is Korea. You can see Japan is right under the green line. China is next to it, and the Soviet Union is the yellow mass above in the north part of the map. So the 38th parallel is where Korea was divided after World War II. In June of 1950, North Korea invades South Korea. Conveniently, the American troops had left just the month before, leaving only sparse members of the United Nations. South Korea is completely surprised. The UN and American troops flood into South Korea in a police action. They're trying to help. Now, if the USSR was involved in the voting like they normally would have been, this would not have happened, and South Korea would have been out of luck. Fortunately, for South Korea, the USSR had been boycotting the UN at the time. They were actually really upset that the UN was not recognizing the new communist government China. So the UN could take action against North Korea to prevent a further war. You can see that the North invaded the South, and they really whooped them, and they retreated. And the North Korean forces, using Soviet weapons, completely overwhelmed South Korean forces. The Battle of Pusan is where the yellow arrow is where UN and South Korea stops North Korean advance, and there's a massive stalemate. I lovingly call this the loop-de-loop. Okay, MacArthur does a loop-de-loop, and he invades Incheon from the side. The UN forces, which is mostly made up of Americans, decide to go to the offensive, and they launch the Battle of Incheon near Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea. Flanked, the North Korean army was split, and it retreats. MacArthur decides to continue to press them past the 38th parallel, pushing them back and pushing them back and pushing them back. The United Nations decided to sort of completely defeat them and to take communism off of the peninsula completely, unify them as one non-communist country. They push them back almost all the way into China, but there's a big problem. As UN gets closer to the Yellow River, China builds up its troops, and 260,000 Chinese soldiers attack. The UN is completely surprised, and they're completely overwhelmed. They retreat a lot and very fast. What you see here is the stalemate that occurred. For another couple years, this fighting would continue. Millions of people would die. This is the third largest toll of death that ever in human history in a battle. There's almost 3 million people die. MacArthur goes to his boss, Truman, says, you know what? If China's going to get involved in this war, we should nuke them. Truman says, that's a really bad idea. That'll start World War III. MacArthur says, no, we need to nuke China, and we need to nuke them now. Truman said, listen, that's a really bad idea. So MacArthur actually goes public and says that Truman basically doesn't know what he's talking about. Truman fires him. MacArthur is publicly criticized. MacArthur publicly criticizes Truman, and Truman fires him. In 1952, Truman's out of the picture too because Eisenhower wins a presidential election, and in 1953, an armistice is signed. And the results look very similar. If we go back, you can see that the North invades the South at the 38th parallel. They get defeated, they do the loop-de-loop, they push them back, way back, and China advances, and you get a Korea that looks very similar to today. So the Koreas today, North and South, are still officially at war. Kim Jong-un, who is in his 30s, took control in 2011 after his father died. His grandfather is Kim Jong-il. North Korea is isolated from the world. They don't communicate, and they have nuclear weapons, but a very, very poor economy. People starve and die, and we don't know much about it. He's actually launched small attacks against South Korea multiple times. It seems like every 6 months he's talking about the great Satan, or the big evil in the world, the United States. South Korea is allied with the United States, so that's always a point of conflict, and we're always wondering if that's going to be a place of war or not. In the last slide, just to illustrate the difference between South and North Korea, you can see here, these are lights. This is a picture of Earth taken at night, and you can see, though not perfectly accurately drawn, this map shows North and South Korea. You can tell that there's not many cities or electricity or there's a whole lot of poverty in North Korea. So communism has not worked out for them well, and even though that they're still communists today.